these videos are actual evidence of the events described in the Bible, specifically Genesis chapter 6 and following. Well, now you know why we spend so much time talking about these texts. And, the reason I even started these videos in the first place was so that I could present evidence that I thought supported what I believed about history, specifically the God Jah, and about the one who came in his name as the Messiah, in my view, okay? Jesus of Nazareth. I understand not everybody accepts him in that light, but the records present him that way, and he comes through a long line of characters, including people like Abraham, who is mentioned in connection with the city of Ur that was discovered 100 or so years ago, but for thousands of years the Bible was describing it and the events that took place there. So Abraham comes from a place of like Ur of the Chaldeans and or Babylonians. And Abraham is the one to whom the Bible says Jah made a promise to him and his children, Isaac, Jacob, and his children, who included Joseph, one who is described as the governor of Egypt. And remember, we discussed how the records show that the migration of peoples from eastern Anatolia or Turkey down into Sumer, down into Egypt, shows that the knowledge that they took with them through the flood and into those locations as they built those cities was preserved and maintained. And Joseph, through whom the Israelites came into Egypt and eventually captivity, but then were freed through Moses by Jah, had access to all of that information. And that's why we believe the biblical record is superior. It's not that the biblical texts we have, even though they are fantastic, like the Dead Sea Scrolls and certain amulets and other representations of biblical texts, and even texts like the Masoretic texts that are 1,000 years old, but which are essentially the same in most critical respects as the Dead Sea Scroll texts that they are representative of. So there is a very credible history to these biblical texts that can be traced all the way back to the records that were preserved after the flood down into Egypt before the Israelites left, and thereafter to whatever extent. But the fact is, they had access to all of that before they left. And so we believe Moses was given the laws and to a large extent brought with him those who knew those texts and records and or those records themselves and preserved them ever since. So, but we do not discount other texts and records, neither the Egyptian records nor the Babylonian records, nor any other ancient or even pre-flood records to the extent they exist, but they have to be credible. We have to be able to show that's something we can compare to the biblical text and make better sense out of and see that it's more correct. Otherwise, in every respect, the biblical text has withstood the test of time and has shown itself to be accurate when it describes these events. And we're just taking a look at one of them, the flood.